What's up, guys? We're just getting back home from a lightning strike. There was a pretty nasty lightning storm that just blew through. So luckily the strike didn't hit any poles, must just hit one of the lines mid-span. So it's just a matter of patrolling the line and closing it back in. I think what we're gonna do while we're waiting for the wife to get home, we're gonna jump on the computer and dive into the archives a little bit. As a trouble/serviceman, I take a lot of pictures, a lot of video, and that didn't start necessarily for the YouTube channel. What happened many years ago, probably 12 years ago now, myself and one of my partners was doing a job. We had a bad underground secondary box, and when we arrived on site we had to dig it up and replace the whole box. So it was a really nice property, an expensive house, nice neighborhood, and the customer was friendly, but something wasn't quite right. So what we did, we got a tarp, we cut out the grass all the way around the URD box and lifted it out of the ground, inserted the new one, put everything back in place real nice and neat, put the grass that was cut out. You couldn't even tell we were there. It was an excellent job. So we took some photos before and after of the property and everything was good. So fast forward about 3 weeks later, supervisor called me into the office, wanted to talk to me, and was asking about that particular job. So the issue was the customer had put in a damage claim. My lens must be dirty. Yeah, that's better. So the customer put in a damage claim because said we ruined his property when we did the work. And attached with the email with the complaint was a bunch of photos. This guy actually went, after we left, and made a mess of his yard. He dug up mud all around the URD box and threw bits and pieces of mud and grass and dirt all over the place and claimed that we left it like that in an attempt to get a free landscaping job. So the boss was a little bit upset, but at the same time, wanted to talk to myself and my partner first, and I had photos that were time-stamped, dated in my phone, show exactly how we left the property. And the customer was pretty embarrassed when my boss showed him the photos. So obviously the damage claim was denied. So bit of a long story, let's jump into it. We're gonna jump on the computer and take a look at some of the old photos and videos I got. Some stuff that wasn't quite worthy or had enough information to put together in a full video. So this one's gonna be kind of a bit of a mashup. So yeah, let's check it out. All right, so the first we're going to take a look at here, timestamp is 2019, November 28th. We had a tree blowing in the wind that, not the branch, but the actual tree was swaying back and forth and making contact with the primary, the 7200 volts. Made for a pretty good light show. So we got a couple quick shots of it before going and opening the line. That particular job, we simply installed some hard cover up, some insulated guards on the primary in order to stop the arcing, and we went back the next day and actually completely removed that tree. This next one with a timestamp of 2020, May, doesn't show, May 1st, 2020. We had an underground cable go bad in a residential neighborhood. I think there was about 40 customers affected. But the cable blew up underground. It was an old cable, been there for 40 or 50 years, direct buried. It wasn't in ducts or nothing. Even if we were able to locate the fault, the cable, to dig it up and do a splice, it was all right under the driveways, the pave, everything. The best option would have been to do a proper trench with the duct bank, but that would have been quite time consuming. So we actually built an overhead line right in between the houses to temporarily pick up the customers that were affected in that neighborhood. That was a long night, a lot of work. I think there was 4 of us on that job.
This one here was a vehicle accident, and I've been wanting to show this one in a video for quite a while. I didn't get a whole lot of footage, but there was one particular point in this video that I wanted to mention, especially for first responders. We were on site before any of the first responders, as we were coincidentally just down the road, and the driver of the vehicle exited the vehicle and basically took off running. A couple of the passerbys were quick to keep people away from the scene and stop the traffic. We arrived within literally 2 minutes of the incident. And the three-phase overhead, while it arced and then stopped, it was on a reclosing device, so it actually had re-energized. And the cutout for that particular transformer opened up. The lead feeding the cutout it had quite a bit of pressure on the crossarm itself. So a crossarm, the dry wooden pole, it's not an excellent conductor, so it wasn't enough to draw enough current to pop that OR again. But technically speaking, that pole would be considered energized. There'd be the voltage would dissipate fairly quickly through the pole. But in a circumstance like this, I would absolutely not touch that vehicle, touch that pole, go near it until that line is opened, the potential is checked, and grounds are installed. One of the firefighters on scene mentioned that the cutout was open to the transformer, and I showed him, even though the cutout was open, that simply disconnected power to the transformer, but the lead was still alive. That presented a very, very dangerous situation to anyone involved. Luckily, we were close by on that one. This is just a quick photo, a great example of a high voltage duct bank. You can see here there's quite a bit of work involved. We had to cut through the pavement, dig down about 6 feet, and put the cable trays, concrete. Everything is measured to spec. When underground cables go bad, not so much the newer stuff, but the older direct buried stuff, in order to fix it properly, it's a lot of work. It involves a lot of different contracts. We have to repair the pavement, the concrete, and that's before we even run the cables and do up the terminations. This photo here from 2021, November 24th, 2021. You can see how the two hots and the neutral are wrapped right up and around the grounded weatherhead. And you can actually see the bare spot that's only millimeters away from a dead short. It's actually melted quite badly. That connection is pretty well ready to fall apart. And also on the siding, the wire was chafing against the siding somehow enough that it wore completely through the insulation. So the live wire was making contact with that siding. I'm not sure how those wires would have ever got up in behind that weatherhead like that. I can assume years ago someone working on the siding must have tucked them up in behind there. It's not something, or I hope it's not something that a lineman would ever do. But this could have been bad if that had made contact with that mast, that weatherhead. It likely would have arced for quite a while, and in fact it probably would have burnt the wires completely off before ever opening the cutout on the transformer. This video here was actually only a couple months ago. We had a pretty heavy rain, and you can see there's not supposed to be any water here at all. There was some major flooding. It caused millions of dollars in damage to the infrastructure, our infrastructure as well as the province. It was a crazy busy night, and the hardest part about that night was actually navigating the washouts in the road closures. There were some main roads that were completely washed out. It was an absolute nightmare, and we're still in the process of fixing up a lot of these damaged culverts and washouts. I've been meaning to show this one online. Actually, again, I might have showed it on my Instagram a few years ago. It's dated November 25th, 2019. This isn't a meter socket. It's for a transformer rated meter. I believe it was a 400 amp entrance. But you can see it's got this little white plastic switch kind of thing in behind the meter. This one I'm going to leave up to you guys in the comments. Has anyone seen these before? If you have, or if you haven't, can you figure out the purpose of that little white toggle switch? And just a quick safety message with this shot, your bucket cover when it rains in the wintertime. I know some of you don't have the cold weather we get up here, But you can get a flash freeze overnight, even during the day, and that rain on your bucket cover turns into a 10-pound projectile that can be extremely dangerous. So always make sure that you do a walk around and clean off your truck before heading out for the day. This one here, I actually stumbled upon this one accidentally. Looks like a homemade do-it-yourselfer attempt at tree removal, as you can see from the ladder setup. So it looks like they dropped a branch on the lines. Thankfully, none of them were power lines. These were communication cables. But the branch come down across communication cables and rip them off the house. Here is a shot of a tree during Hurricane Dorian. It was in September 2019. You can see it uprooted, and this was a massive tree. It extended past the homeowner's property into the next homeowner's property. Even the roots of the tree were bigger than my partner's hand. You can see in this shot here, the tree actually extended past the property, over top of the shed, and onto the garage of the next homeowner. This next one was especially a bad call. We're very fortunate that nobody got hurt on this one. This was dated, again, 2019, July. So there was a dump truck, a full-size dump truck that had his dump up. Normally we get these calls and they're driving under the lines and hook the lines. This one wasn't the case. On a construction site, a complete road, rebuild, sewer, water lines, all that stuff, the ground on the shoulder was soft enough that the truck started sinking on the line side and actually tipped over. The dump landed across the steamroller in this pic here, and there was someone in the cab. Luckily, the cab wasn't crushed. You can see it pretty well fell on either side of the cab. There was 4 or 5 poles that were broken in this incident. The wire, it was a residential neighborhood, so there's guy wires, secondary, fiber optics, transformers. Pretty well all the equipment required for a distribution system was affected in this situation. It was absolute chaos. There was some federal government environmental people there, work safe officers, all the communication companies that were affected. We had 5 or 6 trucks were involved in this one to clean things up. It was an absolute nightmare of a call to respond to. When you walk in on a call like this, right off the bat, there's so many different feeds intersecting that your primary concern is to make sure that there are no injuries, and then the power's out and the downed lines are grounded and safe. And then the next priority would of course be any environmental impact. And then we would begin the process of rebuilding and restoring power to the area. That was another long day. That one went right into the night, that one. Here's a couple quick shots from back in 2017. I wanted to show this one is was one of the house fires I responded to where it was fully engulfed. It was quite a ways out of town, and a lot of our fire departments out of town are 100% run by volunteers. These volunteers, this fire especially, they spent all night working on this fire. Once it's out, they can't simply take off. There's investigation that goes along with it. It could reignite, so there's quite a bit of time spent, all of which is volunteered time by the community. We, as a power company, join them on all structure fires to cut the wires down to the building that's affected, and on occasion we even have to shut power off to the neighborhood if there's a ladder truck involved going up in the air near the lines. It can be quite scary at times. There was no one injured in this fire, but it is another responsibility in being a lineman to respond to these structure fires. And this one was a pretty bad one. I remember that night very clearly, but like I said, nobody was hurt. Another one from back in 2017. We're not going to disconnect a customer just because it's an old code that's grandfathered in, providing everything is safe. This particular setup was never a code. and was also extremely dangerous. You can see that the triplex was actually held directly onto the house by a nail, and then the triplex went directly into the meter box. There was no weatherhead feeding it in. I'm not sure if this was done during storm work or what the situation was. It's not even acceptable for a temporary repair. This one was very dangerous. It's the first and only time I've seen this setup. This shot here, 2018, July 5th, 2018. It's just a couple pics of a broken cutout. The reason I wanted to show these on one of my most recent videos, showing the cracked bell type insulators. A viewer had asked if the ring test works on cutouts, and I mentioned that it doesn't. One of the indicators is if you look on the back where it attaches to the bracket on the pole, oftentimes the grout will actually start turning black and bubbling out before the cutout fails. So in these pics you can see that quite clearly. Now also this is a pretty extreme case of a broken cutout. You could see it right from the ground. But sometimes you'll see the grout boiling out in a cutout, you won't see any cracks at all. And that's a good visual indicator that the porcelain's been compromised on that cutout. These next few pics were from a vehicle accident on a secondary road back in August 2018. You can see here the pole was broke flush with the ground. We didn't touch this part in these pics yet. The pole was completely shattered, basically disintegrated from the impact. And the transformer and the pole landed on the ground. So there was an oil spill, and one of the primary concerns is to contain the oil in the area. Next up, we've got a video that I'm sure you've all seen this one before. There's a quick clip of it in the intro, in the older intro that I used. A contractor was removing some trees, and they were extremely close to the primary. So it's a very reputable arborist that works in the area, and he contacted us for some help on this one. And we decided the best way to remove the trees was to wait until the lake was frozen. Once a date was scheduled, they actually tested the depth, the thickness of the ice on the lake. We took an outage on the line. Not only did we take an outage, but we also grounded and covered the primary. So it was a great job working together with the arborists and the community members to safely remove these trees and remove a hazard from the lines. All right, so just one last clip. I'm glad I found this one. I was specifically looking for it. This was a call I responded to. It was a pretty routine outage. Showed up, there was maybe 2 span of primary off the sideline with the transformer on the dead end pole, and everything checked out. So we refused and closed the line in, which didn't hold. The cutout blew. And the transformer had all the proper guards, the squirrel guard, bird guards, had the bird wire on it and stuff. So we started to assume maybe it was a bad transformer, but I climbed up the pole to take a closer look, and I was kind of disgusted with what I found, actually. And we did some investigating and discovered that this was a storm repair. It wasn't one of our crews that made the repair, but a tree had fallen on the line. Let's see if one of these photos shows the fence. Anyways, you could see where the fence was hit by the tree, and it busted the top bushing on the transformer. Now, it was a difficult area to access, so it would have been not even really that big of a job to change the transformer, but more of a slight inconvenience to get backlot. Getting off topic, but so it busted the primary bushing of the transformer, and what the crew did, instead of changing the transformer, they actually took a wire and used a crimp and crimped it to the lead that connected to the primary bushing of the transformer. So the bushing had a huge hole through the top where it broke off, and it was re-energized like that, which it's extremely dangerous. That transformer, for one, it's going to fill up with water, and the water is going to destroy the dielectric properties of the oil. It's only a matter of time before it trips. I think it actually held for several months. This was back in 2019 that we got these photos here in October 2019. But something like this, guys, there certainly are some temporary repairs you can do during storm work, but there's also stuff you just don't do. You're not going to make a temporary repair that's unsafe, or that's just going to cause another problem within a few weeks. So we're going to leave it at that for today, guys. I could show pictures and talk about some of these trouble calls all day. I wish I had these files organized a little better. I've got thousands and thousands of files. Like I said, it's great when I actually just had one of the foremen call me last week and referred to a trouble call from 2 years ago. So I went on my phone, and everything's categorized by date in the phone. I found some pictures taken of the incident that day, and we were able to rectify a situation quite easily. So while our phones can certainly be abused and used in inappropriate times, they're also a great tool for liability reasons, to protect yourself and your company from situations, especially where there's damage to customer property. So lots of pictures. The picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So we're gonna end this one off with a quick video, actually from the little image when you subscribe to my channel, the picture of me with the safety glasses on, looking all angry and stuff. That was a shot from this day here, where we were up in the mountain. It was quite a neat view in the fall, all the colored leaves and stuff. So anyways, we're gonna wrap this one up, guys. The wife just pulled in the driveway, so I feel kind of awkward talking to the wall when people are around me. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for stopping in as always, and see you next time.